Hello guys, my name is Jeff, and this is the extremely aerodynamic, egg-shaped 2024 Mercedes-Benz EQE Sedan. And it is the result of lots of time and money from Mercedes to develop a new line of EVs that are all the EQ series, which can be kind of confusing as they share a lot of the same names, and even more confusing for the consumer because it's a total new lineup of models. Instead, Mercedes probably should have just added an E onto the existing names of their current lineup. But nonetheless, in this video, here is what they have developed so far, but they have since actually withdrawn future development into EVs, with Mercedes stating they might save as much as $4 to $6 billion with a B dollars on future EV development. But in this video, I'll show you what they have so far here in the sedan as we go through the exterior, the interior, the powertrain, and of course, we'll take it for a drive. So here it is, the Mercedes-Benz EQE with a standard issue Mercedes-Benz key, and it has a starting price of $74,900, which isn't too shabby. And if you want the SUV version, which the only difference in naming schemes, it's kind of confusing, is actually going to be the sedan or SUV part at the end, that's going to run you $3,000 more. So $77,900, not too shabby there. Now this car, as equipped, does have a variety of different options, most notably the fact that it has a lot of the AMG line packages on both the exterior and interior. And so this thing will run you $97,615 for the car that we'll be looking at today. Now, some of the important things to note is that these are available in both single motor and dual motor versions. And the interesting part is that the horsepower actually remains the same at 288 horsepower, regardless of which one you choose. The main difference there is going to be the torque, which it bumps it up to 564 pound-feet of torque for a dual motor version like this one. But the other difference is the single motor cars will be rear-wheel drive versus the dual motor cars will be all-wheel drive. So that's the big important difference there. If you needed an all-wheel drive version, 4MATIC is what Mercedes-Benz calls it. You can see it here on the back. And of course, the different power ranges as well, depending on what motors you end up getting. Now, this thing is quite the beast. It weighs a lot, 5,635 pounds, but it'll run 0 to 60 in just 6 seconds, according to Mercedes, with a limited top speed of 131 miles per hour. But that's not all. We need to talk about the important stuff like the EV nature, and that is the fact that this thing has an EPA estimated 280 miles of range, which isn't bad, but it's not that great either. I found myself suffering from a bit of range anxiety while driving this thing. So it's 86 miles per gallon E-City, 96 miles per gallon E-Highway, 90 miles per gallon E-Combined. But that fluctuates, and there's other ways to mitigate that while you're looking on the interior, but we'll talk about more of that later. The other important thing to discuss is charging. So this thing does have fast charging, so it'll run 10 to 80% in just 32 minutes if you needed to charge it quickly. So that's important to know. Obviously, that's pretty standard. Most EVs that last 20% or so is always the longest to charge. But that's a quick look at the EQE on the surface level. So next, let's move on to the exterior, which we have to start from extremely far away to take a look at this interesting egg shape, which is supposed to be rather aerodynamic, but notice the doors just popped out. So as you walk up, not only does this have passive keyless entry, but the cool part is these doors actually hide away, but as you walk up with the key in your pocket, they automatically open up for you, which is a pretty nice feature. And obviously them being tucked away technically makes it a little bit more aerodynamic, I suppose, which adds to this overall egg shape that I'm just not sure I can ever really get behind. Obviously, this hopefully extends your range a little bit by giving it this more aerodynamic look, but it's not that appealing. And for the price, it would have been nice to see something with maybe what felt like a little bit more effort in the aerodynamic styling department. Now let's go ahead and take a look at overall features. Now looking at the front here, they like to give it a sort of pseudo grille look, and this is going to be similar to what you'll find on some of the gas models. Two Mercedes badging, obviously our camera and some of other radar tech is hidden in the nose here. You know, all of the little Mercedes tri-stars hidden in here, which is actually similar to some of the gas grills you'll find. I should also note that this car actually has the AMG line exterior package, so that's going to change some of the exterior cosmetics to make it look a little bit more aggressive and AMG-like. You do have these LED adaptive digital lights, which also have the adaptive assist high beams. So they look quite good, quite sharp. Obviously, a lot of the TriStar theming throughout, which Mercedes did very, very well there. I like the way they do a lot of the TriStar styling in these cars. So come around to the side here. We even have these big 20-inch wheels, which are actually incredibly quiet as well as you drive them on the road, with these interesting AMG branded wheels and even these sort of plastic covers in the wheels, which is kind of a shame to have. Now, some of the interesting interesting things as a whole is the fact that here you don't actually have storage space in the front. A lot of EVs tend to have both a trunk and a frunk, but not here. In fact, you can't actually open this up at all. This is only for the AMG technicians. It's also, we're going to have the HEPA air filtration system is going to be hidden in there underneath, but we'll talk more about that in the interior section. You'll also notice some other gaps. The mirrors fold as well. This car does have the panorama roof. We should talk about underneath in particular because this is sort of a luxury EV. This actually has the comfort adaptive suspension from Mercedes, but this car in particular has also been optioned with the air suspension, which makes for an even softer ride. Disc brakes hidden behind the wheels here. You can see that the keyless entry, even if you don't have the pop-out function, actually has the keyless option on all 4 doors, which is not something that's too common, but it is equipped here and it looks quite nice. A little bit of a spoiler back here, a very, very small rear window that can be a little bit difficult to see out of, EQE 350 badging, 4MATIC, and of course, even the option to pop the hatch, which is powered here, and you get quite a bit of storage, and technically you can get even more storage if you fold down the back seats. So that's a quick look at everything, power functionality for everything, even power folding for the rear seats. Not too shabby. Obviously, you get all the fun noises that happen with this car too. It even has a little bit of a interesting rear diffuser. But that's a quick look at the exterior of the EQE Egg. So moving on to the interior, if we open this up, this car is equipped with the AMG line interior package, which is going to add a lot of different things. This particular interior is this black leather here, which also has these perforated seats that do offer some side bolstering, but we even have this gray leather with red stitching, and of course, even this wood, which actually runs all the way across the dash there. The AMG package includes things like this flat bottom steering wheel, along with a variety of other changes. Before we get too far into the technology, we should take a look at the back seat, because this car does have 4 doors after all, and we should see the functionality. Now, being that this car does in fact offer an SUV version, you would expect there's a good amount of space in this car, and there is in fact a good amount of space. Now, I'm about 6 foot for reference. My hair is currently touching this top sort of mesh part here for the panorama roof, but if you were to lower this back, my head wouldn't be touching the roof, so that's fairly nice. The other important part is actually total legroom. So if you look here, the seat is currently set up for me, and my knees aren't even touching the back of the seat. So that is quite a lot of space back here for any additional passengers. You can certainly fit most adults, definitely kids, and as far as the overall functionality, comfort is generally pretty good. Now, there are some other cool features. We actually have the center armrest here that if we lower it down, you can pop it out once, and that gives you like this sort of handhold for stuff, but you can pop it out again if you wanted to, and then you get access to cup holders, which is pretty cool. There's not anything overly luxurious back here. I want to point out that the only vents that you'll find in the back are right here in the center, and you do have this little charging section that pops out. But other than that, some Burmester speakers and some additional heated seats. It would have been nice to have some more ventilated options back here. It's fairly bare bones for the back seats, but not bad overall. Now let's go back to the front so we can talk of the real features. So if we go ahead and hop in here, which this car does have the illuminated door sills and the puddle lights, push to start, and everything comes to life. Now, obviously, there's not a whole lot to power up because this is, of course, an EV at the end of the day. You have a lot of the button functionality. You do get digital displays here in front of you and here in the center. This car also has a heads-up display, which is a pretty nice luxury feature. Now, one of the cool things about the way that Mercedes actually does this is the fact that you have this big iPad-sized display here in the center, which obviously is a touchscreen and can easily be managed and jumped through, which at times can feel a bit overwhelming, but they actually have a variety of shortcuts down here that makes it quite easy to function, including additional volume, mute, power controls, and you'll also find these shortcuts here for things like your cameras. You actually have your sport modes, which can easily be adjusted through this button here. And then you even have, obviously, even the specific car modes, which includes all sorts of extra features. Now, this one is really interesting, the EQ button. What this is sort of a system to manage and observe everything that's happening with your car in terms of the powertrain. So currently we can see we are at 51% charge, and of course, this gives us some various charging data. But here in the range section is especially interesting. Now, what this does is it'll actually show you how to get the optimum range out of your car. So for example, it it's showing me that currently with our climate control on, because it's 110 degrees here in Phoenix right now, if we turn that off, we could get additional range. But obviously that's unreasonable given the current temperature. And so that's just an interesting thing to get an idea that helps reduce range anxiety, because you can get a rough idea of what you can actually do to improve your total range and get the most out of your battery. So pretty interesting features that are in here. Now, even though this can feel like a bit much at first, it's actually quite easy to use, and once you get used to it, there's all sorts of different stuff that you can mess with and use. Seat kinetics, which are not quite massaging seats, but it moves the seat around so it doesn't get too uncomfortable. You do, of course, get ambient lighting in this car, which has some cool features like this one, the Energy Shine, that actually moves the ambient lighting that goes throughout the car. We'll adjust it as with what the car is doing. My personal favorite is either between the Malibu Sunset or even the Miami Rose themes, just because I think they make for cool colors, but that's 64 color adjustable. You do get dual zone climate control as well. This very clean and chic interior. Some of the funky things would be the fact that you get these beautiful Mercedes vents, except for here in the center. There are these standard vents that aren't quite as functional, not quite as mobile, but not too shabby nonetheless. In here, we actually have some more chargers, these cup holders that actually fold away, and then the minute you set a drink down, they fold out. You get a wireless charger, some additional storage, place to put your key, very nice storage pocket here in the center. Overall, it's not too shabby. You get some paddle shifters on the back, which makes little to no sense for the sporty driving modes, because at the end of the day, this is an EV, so there's no gears to actually shift, so that's all simulated. We could talk about the various modes that exist on this car. You don't get the full suite of drive modes from Mercedes. Obviously, comfort is going to be that main mode here in the middle. Economy here is going to limit some of your throttle inputs to sort of improve your accelerating and therefore get more range, hopefully. And you do get this sport mode here, which is going to, of course, sort of pick up the pep of the car and even an individual mode, so you can customize whatever you want. One of the other interesting things to point out is actually going to be the air quality here. So this car has that HEPA filter that I mentioned on the exterior in the front, and this is essentially purifying the air that comes into it. So if you live in a, let's say, beefy industrial area, or even like Phoenix or LA with lots of smog, this is going to help purify that air. So it can be a little bit better for you if that's something you're looking for. Depending on the models and options you get, there's also an available essentially scent option on some of these cars, where you can get a scent put into the car so it sprays in through the climate control system as an available option, which is a little bit interesting. Obviously, this is going to have all sorts of those Mercedes navigation features, phone connections, Bluetooth, Sirius XM, all of that is going to be available in here. The other thing is that you can manage a lot of your various displays in front of you here. You do get your range display, and even your charge is always available there on what is your mile per hour gauge. And then you have your power percentage gauge, which is not necessarily required, but just available. Eco display, all sorts of adjustable settings here, including your mileage and range, a lot of the same information you would expect on a gas car. The navigation display is nice and big, radio, all sorts of stuff that's available and easy to access depending on what you're looking for. Mixed with the fact that you have that heads-up display I mentioned earlier as an option, you can do a lot of stuff here. You do get memory settings. The seats are actually heated in the front as well. No ventilated seats here, which for the price, I would have definitely expected that. And it's a bit of a shame not to have that in this car, especially with how expensive it is. But all things considered, it's quite a nice interior. The Burmester sound system that's in this car does sound incredible. Everything just looks the part, and it is definitely a Mercedes on the inside. It just would have been nice to see a bit more for how much you spend. But all in all, still looks beautiful. So what's it like to drive the Mercedes-Benz EQE? Well, first impressions are good, and you may not have noticed, but I'm actually on the freeway, and this car is incredibly quiet. There's no road noise, no wind noise, and it does a great job of isolating all that, including other vehicles, which is incredibly good. And that's even with the radio off. If you turn the radio on, obviously that's going to be even better as far as what all noise reduction and things that it can actually do to improve your experience in the car. So that's already very impressive. Now, on top of that, it's a Mercedes-Benz. So the interior is, of course, very luxury focused. The seats are very comfortable. You can spend a lot of time in them. Obviously, the steering wheel with the AMG line package is incredibly comfortable. There's a lot of things to like about this car from driving it. The other thing that's kind of interesting is the fact that this is the sedan, which is the smaller version, right? But What's cool about it is it actually has a little bit higher visibility, more akin to like a crossover or a compact SUV. So you sit a little bit higher, which gives you that more upright visibility. You can see further ahead. That's all great stuff. And I imagine it would be pretty similar in the SUV version of the EQE, maybe a little bit higher. I don't really know. I don't have much experience with that car, but that's a cool thing. That's one of those things that just makes you a little bit more at ease as a driver. So overall, it's pretty good. I will say this back hatch here in the sedan is not great. It would have been nice to have a video mirror because you can't really see out the sort of sloping egg-shaped fastback profile, but it's not too shabby nonetheless. The A-pillars are fairly thick, but they're so far front that they don't really obstruct your vision much. You can see out of the windows just fine. So overall, it's not too bad. The actual driving feedback of the car isn't everything overly interesting or engaging. It's not really an enthusiast car, but it's fine for driving it from point A to point B. Okay, so there you have it. That is a look at the Mercedes-Benz EQE. So now for some final thoughts. Now, this vehicle is incredibly luxurious. Of course, it's a Mercedes-Benz luxury vehicle, but it's also very, very expensive. In fact, there are a lot of different vehicles, especially if you're willing to look at a non-EV vehicle, which can feature all sorts of things like heated and ventilated seats front and rear. There's also a variety of other EVs that also feature that for less money, which I would argue is almost more important than the just general feel of the interior. Now, that being said, the engineering and extra effort that goes into this car is what makes a Mercedes-Benz a Mercedes-Benz. There are little details and thoughts in the engineering and how things work in this car that are better than what you'll find in other cars. That's just the way it is. That's what you pay for by buying a Mercedes. But if you don't need that in this as an EV, which might even just be your daily, your A to B from work, and you don't want to spend that much, then there are some other options to consider. That being said, if you are dead set on the EQE and its various versions, both the sedan and maybe even the SUV, which comes with more storage for not much more money, then the one I'd recommend is always going to be the cheapest ones that get what you want. Whether you want the rear-wheel drive or the dual motor makes a little bit more sense because of that extra power, but it's the same horsepower rating for the single motor and the dual motor, with the AMG obviously being a totally different bracket. So that's totally up to you. I'd recommend getting the cheaper ones, but take it for a test drive. Make sure that you won't suffer from any range anxiety. The thing is pretty good. Lots of ways to help reduce range anxiety on the inside as well. And obviously, it's going to be very luxurious. Certain things like the AMG line stuff really isn't worth the add-ons, but of course, some of the luxuries might be worth it. But with that, that's going to be the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and could leave a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. And consider getting subscribed for more content like this in the future. With that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.